Hello again. I'm Emily, I'm a storyteller, and I'm here in my fairy tale tower, and I've got a story for you. It's a story about the Fianna. Now, the Fianna were the great warrior poets of Ireland. Their motto was, purity of heart, strength of limb, may our words always match our deeds. To even be considered suitable to join the Fianna? Well, first you had to go through a number of tasks. One of these tasks was you had to put your hair into a certain amount of braids and then run full speed through the forest. And if you broke a single twig under your foot, or if even one of your braids came undone, well, then you couldn't join the Fianna. You had to be buried in a hole up to your waist, armed with only a stick, and then defend yourself from 12 men with spears. And if you had even a scratch on you, you couldn't join the Fianna. You had to be able to leap over a pole as high as your head, duck under one as low as your knee. But it wasn't all about muscle. You needed brain as well as brawn. You had to be a poet. You had to be able to recite the old stories and sagas. You had to be able to compose music on the spot. So as you can probably imagine, well, the Fianna were quite something. And they were led by a man called Fionn McCool, the greatest hero in Irish mythology. And Fionn had a son. His son was called Oisin, and Oisin was said to be the Fianna's greatest musician. Now one day, Fionn, Oisin and the rest of the Fianna, well, they were taking a bit of a break from having heroic adventures. There was nothing that needed to be fought, no one who needed to be rescued, and they were, well, enjoying a bit of sun on the beach, when one of the men called out that he could see something. There was something coming across the waves, and it wasn't a boat. It was a horse. All of the men turned and looked, and indeed, there was a horse riding across the water, a beautiful white stallion. But the horse was nothing compared to the rider, because riding this horse was Niamh of Tirnanogue. Now, the men of the Fianna, they'd seen sights few mortals got to behold. They'd seen treasures. They'd seen gods. They'd seen nothing that compared to Niamh. Niamh, she rode up to them and said, "Men of the Fianna, I have been told that among your number I shall find my true love. Which of you shall love me and be loved by me in return?" And instantly, the men of the Fianna, this elite fighting force, well, they all turned into a pack of 2-year-olds, all jumping up and down, screaming, me, pick me, I'm the strongest, no, I'm the fastest, I can throw my spear the farthest. They all began to show off their great feats of physical prowess. All but Oisin. Oisin had very quietly picked up his harp and begun to tune it. And when it was tuned to his liking, he started to play. And he played a song from his heart to Niamh's heart. And when Niamh heard, she began to sing. She sang a song from her soul to Oisin's soul. And when their music met and mingled, well, they knew they were meant to be together. Oisin picked up his harp under one arm and went to get on the horse behind Niamh, but his father called out, "Oisin, don't go!" You see, Fionn, he just had a terrible premonition. A premonition that if his son went away with this woman, he would never again be seen. But Oisin turned back to his father and said, "Father, I promise you, before 7 years have passed, I shall return to the shores of Ireland." And Fionn had to be content with that his son would never break his word, that a man of the Fianna would always keep his promise. But still, while he watched Oisin ride away, he couldn't shake the feeling that would be the last time he ever saw his son. Niamh, well, she brought Oisin to Tirnanogue. Tirnanogue is a magical island. It's a place where there's no suffering, there's no sickness or death. Oisin and Niamh, they lived there together very happily. They had 2 beautiful children. But by the time his 7th year was coming around, well, Oisin knew he had to go back. He had to keep his promise. He had to return to Ireland. Niamh, though, begged him not to go. Why would you want to go back to the mortal world anyway? To the place where there is old age, where there is death. But Oisin had to keep his promise. And when Niamh realised she couldn't persuade him otherwise, she agreed she would lend him her magic horse. Her horse, which knew the way between the worlds. It would bring him safely there, it would bring him safely back. But Niamh made him promise not to get off the horse. Not to even let the land of Ireland touch his skin. And Oisin didn't understand why, but he promised. He wouldn't get off the horse, he wouldn't let the land of Ireland touch his skin. He would return. Niamh, she watched him ride away, but even though he'd promised to come back, she couldn't shake the feeling that that would be the last time she ever saw her husband. The horse had brought Oisin to Ireland, and he recognised it. He recognised the coastline, the mountains against the sky, but it was different somehow. It was greyer than he remembered. And the people, they were smaller, weaker. And when he asked them, "Where do the Fianna hunt this night? Where does Fionn McCool lodge?" Well, the people just looked at him blankly. Now, this wasn't right. Every person in Ireland should know who the Fianna were. Should be able to say where their leader, Fionn McCool, was. If Oisin couldn't find out where the Fianna were from the people of Ireland, well, then Ireland must be under a spell. That was the only thing that made sense. There was a dark magic at work. Oisin, he knew he had to get back to Tirnanog, back to Niamh. Niamh, she would know what the problem was. She would know how to fix it. He turned his horse to ride away, but as he did so, he passed a group of men trying to push a boulder out of the way of the road. Oisin, with his great hero's strength, he was able to lean down and with one hand roll that stone away. But as he did so, his saddle, it became unbalanced. Oisin was tipped off his horse. He landed with a crash. The horse, startled, rode off without him. And the minute Oisin's skin touched the land of Ireland, 700 years fell on him. For time moves differently in the fairy world. For every 1 year that had passed in Tirnanog, over 100 had passed in Ireland. That was the reason that no one could tell Oisin where his friends were, where his family was. Every mortal person Oisin had ever known, well, they were now all long dead. And Oisin could feel he himself, he didn't have much time left. Already, at the tips of his fingers, he was turning into dust. So he called to the men around him, "Please, someone, bring me a bard, bring me a scribe, bring me someone who has a good memory. There are things that I must tell you." The men, they ran off and they brought back a monk. And the monk began to write down everything that Oisin told him. Oisin told him about the adventures of the Fianna, the stories of his father, Fionn McCool, the tales about his friends, the stories about Diarmid O'Divna, and the love spot that got him into no end of trouble. The stories of Cuilche MacRonan, fastest man in Ireland, who could talk to the birds. He even told a few stories about old grumpy, one-eyed Goyle MacMorna. But the last story he told was the story of Niamh. The story of how he, Oisin, a man of the Fianna, he'd fallen in love with a fairy woman. He'd gone away with her, and he had returned to find everything he knew was gone. But he said if he was offered the choice between one more day with Niamh and 700 more years of life with the Fianna, well, he would take that one day with Niamh every time. He died with the name of his love on his lips, apologising that he couldn't keep his promise and return to her. Oisin and the Fianna, they're all long in their grave, but we're still telling stories about them. The stories that Oisin told the monk that were written down, They are said to be the basis for the Fenian cycle that we know today. And they also say, while someone's name is still spoken, while their deeds still echo the earth, while they are not forgotten, they are not truly gone. And that's why we keep telling these old stories. Because when you tell an old story, you help to keep an old hero like Oisin alive. Sorry, that was a bit of a sad one. Hope you enjoyed it anyway. Maybe next time I'll have a happier story.